Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the EoTech EFLX. As you guys know, I'm pretty much primarily Patreon exclusive these days, but I still do periodically release a video here on YouTube. This is one of them. I wanted to drop the EoTech EFLX video specifically because it's a very popular optic and a lot of people are asking my opinion, and most people aren't just going to go to the white paper and read just that line of information that's entered in the section about optic testing that I've done as I periodically update. But if you're interested in that paper, you can get it on the sagedynamics.org website. Scroll down, look for the paper on MRDSs, and my latest testing data is in there. But if you want to see it on video, here's your opportunity to do that. So let's check it out. Not their first foray into pistol optics, and there's some ambiguity here, but years ago, Insight/EoTech, I believe there was a relationship there. I could be wrong. They had a holographic type weapon sight. I'm not sure if it's strictly holographic, but just it's had the very similar holographic weapon system reticle that's known from EoTech's. And that was in the dark ages of handgun optics. And then they just didn't have anything for a very, very long time. So them looking at the market, I'm sure they're thinking, okay, we need to get something out there. And as long as it probably took them to develop this optic, I can't say for certain, but just using a timeline of other optic companies, I'm familiar with how long it takes them to get products to market. I'm sure it wasn't like something they knocked out on a napkin over a weekend. It probably put a lot of conscious thought into the design of the optic to get it to market. It was curious that they went with an open emitter because everybody seems to be leaning towards enclosed emitters, which honestly, an open emitter is fine, but it does have a little bit more potential disadvantages in a closed emitter, kind of a separate conversation. But they released this open emitter optic, which is available in a 3 MOA or a 6 MOA dot with manual adjustments. And as far as settings go, you're getting 8 daytime settings and 1 night vision setting, powered by a CR2032 top load battery, which is cool. I think, you know, the optics where you these days when you have to remove them from the gun to change the battery are kind of outliers at this point. Everybody's pretty much gone to side load or top load. As far as battery life goes, depending on which brightness setting you're using, your optimal battery life, they're quoting, of course, 25,000 hours for 3 MOA at level 5 and 20,000 hours with the 6 MOA at level 5. Aluminum body, Delta Point Pro footprint. I gotta go right back to the, well, you know what, first let's talk about what's good about the EFLX. So those of you who already caught the initial impressions video, you're familiar, you're probably already seeing where things might go, but we're going to talk about what's actually good about the optic. First things first, it has the Delta Point Pro footprint, which is a pretty popular footprint. The body height is not enormous, it's not abnormal, it's not considerably tall, so you can use traditional suppressor height sights with it. I don't think you'd be able to get away with traditional height sights even with a really deep cut because the body is, because it's a top load battery and it uses a larger 2032, electronics and all these other factors in play there. I don't think you're going to get away with it. But I think at this point we're all used to that anyway. So going forward from that, you have really intuitive, really easy adjustments. However, the adjustments are not shrouded or protected in any way. So carry can cause adjustments, and I had that happen to me when shooting it concealed. I had a couple times where it would bump the button up, not a big deal, bump the button down, kind of a big deal. Dot quality, both the 3 and the 6 MOA are excellent. The glass is really clean. There isn't a super noticeable notch filter, although there is some significantly noticeable distortion when working parallax and possibly something that you would notice when factoring in shooting from odd angles or taking fast shots from presentation. If that dot doesn't perfectly center or the gun doesn't perfectly align, you could have some potential distortion that's going to be an issue. It's not the end of the world. You can still get your hits, but it's noticeable, and it's something I definitely noticed. Obviously, that's not a positive, but I felt like since I was talking about it, I would mention it. That's pretty much where the good ends. As you know from the initial impressions video I talked about, I originally started the review on a 3 MOA model, and I mounted it to a SIG P320 factory optic cut. The only thing not stock about that gun, which is completely irrelevant, but I'm mentioning it, is it's got a Wilson Combat grip module. Everything else is stock SIG, torqued properly, mounted it, shot it, got it zeroed. So check out Confirmation Zero Group for that. Now it's a 25 yard shooting 124 grain gold dot. During that first 500 rounds after zeroing, confirming the zero, I got into some of my one-handed manipulations, which isn't even a drop test. We're not even there yet. I was just using the optic to work the slide on the gun, which is something we teach people to do when shooting one-handed if your other hand's wounded or occupied with a flashlight or whatever's going on. It's just a technique that they've been teaching forever. It's something that I do because the optic's going to be used that way. And a lot of people, because they have an optic now, they have this huge, very inviting ledge, they like to manipulate the gun off of it versus even when they have another hand available. Sometimes they still manipulate their hand off the optic body, which I don't really advise, but you can get away with it. Anyway, I just noticed that, after some one-handed manipulations, I felt like I lost zero. So I bagged the gun back down and shot another 5-round group to see what had happened. That's definitely a lost zero. I re-zeroed the gun. And then we made it through the first 500 rounds and I got to that first drop test. After that first drop test, I put the gun back on paper to see if it had lost zero. I knew it had because I could tell by where the dot was in the window relative to before the drop and after the drop. But I went ahead and shot it on paper to get a look at how bad it was. Now this is where I had to ask the question, is it the slide, is it the optic footprint, or is it the optic? Because one of the things that is unique about the SIG 320 footprint is the majority of them that are out there, the 3 factory SIG 320 slides I have that are factory cut for optics that have their footprint or the Delta Point Pro type footprint, don't have recoil bosses. So even though I couldn't physically move the optic, the fences looked good, the optic was sitting in there well, I was like, it could have possibly, because it doesn't take much for the optic to shift in order to cause a loss of point of aim, point of impact. So I went ahead and said, you know what, I'm going to start all over again. I'm going to get this taken care of. EoTech was nice enough, having seen some social media posts about my problems, to send me out 2 new optics. They sent me out a 3 MOA and a 6 MOA. I threw the 6 MOA on the gun and started over, this time mounting it on my FN 509 MRD LE model. Now this has recoil bosses, so we're eliminating that potential from the issue. If the recoil bosses, the lack of them on the SIG, caused the problem, we were going to find out going forward again. The only significant difference I noticed with this model is the larger dot. It's literally twice as big, 6 MOA. Not something I used to really like the 6 MOAs, and I'm fine with them. But the cool thing about the EFLX is their 6 MOA is still really crisp, of course, if you're target focused, to my eyes. I think some people with astigmatisms may disagree, but in my experience, no 2 astigmatisms are quite the same. So it's not going to be preferable to everybody, but I mean, 6 MOA is still a completely reasonable dot size, so it's good that they offer it, because some people are getting away from offering the larger dots. It's cool that EoTech still does. Unfortunately, I said, you know what, I'm going to get into this first 500 rounds. I will save my one-handed manipulations until after the first drop test. We're just going to go ahead and just shoot the optic. And the optic ran well, good transitions. The only complaint I have, and I think I brought this up in the initial impressions video, is the brightness settings. It needs a couple more. It does not get bright enough for my preferences and for how I would instruct people to set their optic up for all possible or all likely lighting conditions. It just doesn't get bright enough. So in low light, you're going to be fine, but if you kick on 1,000 lumens, your dot may wash a little bit. During the day, depending on where the sun is at in the sky, which is completely out of our hands, sometimes the dot washes out based on sunlight. So if the sun is behind the range, or it's behind the berm, or it's just angled just right, that perfect headshot from million miles away, I lose the dot a little bit, or I get a ghost image. The ghost image is noticeably not the reticle, but it's still in the window, and I still don't like it. So anytime light is able to hit that window, if the dot's not bright enough, that creates an issue. Then we got to, after 500 rounds, getting a feel for it. Still, everything's going great. It was holding zero. All I was doing was shooting it. I was shooting 115 and 124, and we got to the first drop test. Now, generally, this drop test takes place and we immediately go into the burn down, and then we do another drop test pretty much immediately. Sometimes I knock them out in the same day. There have been times when I've gone to the range and gotten 3 drop tests, because it's a drop test every 500 rounds. I've gotten 3 done. So I went ahead and did drop test on the new and improved drop zone. Well, not improved, but new drop zone I have here at the Sage Ranch. And before I show you that, let me show you a 5-round group I fired for zero confirmation with the FN 509 MRD LE. Here's your drop. Loss of zeros, probably a thing. And here's another 5-round group fired immediately after that drop test. So that's 2 optics on 2 different guns that lost 0. Also, there is some significant flaking to the top right corner, probably the point of impact. Again, I get shrouds are what they are. This shroud seems to be well constructed and well thought out, but you're still putting a lot, I mean, if it hits just right, you're putting a lot of pressure right there on that right angle, almost a right angle. I mean, it's rounded, chamfered if you like. That could be problematic. Not a big deal, but I was able to crack the other one too. Now, they did send me 2, so I could start this process all over again, and I will. I'm probably not going to do it on video just because I don't have time to film this over and over and over and over again, but you will see updates in the white paper. If something significantly changes with the 3rd attempt to run the EFLX, I'll definitely let you guys know. There was a huge social media push on this thing, and I feel like the people at EoTech were trying to produce a really good handgun optic. But, and you know, this is no shade necessarily tossed their way, but I feel like maybe they didn't talk to the right people, or maybe they didn't consider the implications of use. My sample size is very, very large, and I say that because I teach all over the United States, and I see a lot of people running red dots, and then when I teach LE-specific classes or instructor-level classes, I hear back from people about their students who are also, or their officers who are also running red dots. So I've got a pretty big sample size, not just of me breaking optics, but also hearing back from how optics are being broken when they are being broken out in the real world. And this optic does give me a little bit of pause because EoTech is a trusted name. They've had some controversial issues here and there, but you still see a lot of their products out there. I am a big fan of their magnified optics. I like the Voodoo, the 1-10. I've never been a huge fan of their holographic sights, mainly because of battery life. Now, the battery life thing has always killed it for me, but the reticles are super clean, mounting's good, you know, you can put a riser on it, get a little higher, controls were there, but the battery life was always just kind of a turnoff for me compared to other optics. So there's a lot of trust in that name, and we've seen this with other companies as well, where the one segment will have this great, well-known, well-respected durability and reliability. They'll move into a different segment, and people expect that to transfer, and it doesn't. And this may be their first outing. They may go back to the drawing board with this or come up with an updated unit, and that may be great, but for right now, I would tell anyone that this is not an optic to buy. It just really isn't, because it's an also-ran. It exists also. It doesn't do anything significantly well enough at its price point versus other optics. Now, if you're brand loyal, great, go ahead and pick one up, but you're literally handicapping yourself with the durability and fragility issues you're going to see with this. And this is not just me. I'm hearing back from other people who've had their EFLXs lost 0 or glass cracked or had battery issues or something like that. So maybe it's just that first run, but I feel like these were bugs that were easily remedied prior to the launch of a product. And I always make myself available for, you know, any optic company. And this is why I don't have an official relationship. I have been approached by different optic companies. Hey, you know, we want to sponsor you, or we want you to be on our pro staff. And I've just avoided it because that limits me from having reasonable conversations with other optic companies, because I want all optics to be good. It's probably never going to happen, but it would be nice. So if EoTech had reached out to me and said, hey, you got some input, I would humbly give them, you know, what advice I could possibly offer. I'm not an engineer, but I've broken and witnessed the breaking of enough optics at this point to know what's going to work. And I also see the most common situations in which these optics do fail. A lot of naysayers out there. You know, there's always been people who didn't like the drop test, but, you know, I think we've moved past this now, especially with this more intimate Patreon environment. This is, of course, not going to be a viral video. You guys are getting it. I may post it on YouTube later, although right now, as of today, which is January 25th, 2023, YouTube has once again increased the severity of their fair use policy, whatever, and they've started deleting some of my older videos. So we'll see just how big of an issue that is. I'm not going to fight it because you can't fight people who arbitrarily get to change their minds. At the end of the day, they're their own company, and I have to abide by the rules even if they constantly change them, and that's fine. because I'm pushing everything out on Patreon anyway. So, getting back to the optic. Battery's cool, footprint's cool, size is cool, glass quality is cool. A little bit of distortion though. As far as some people are going to ask about night vision, it has one night vision setting. Again, I don't use night vision settings on reticles because I feel like I might have to go and flip my nods up and use a white light or be able to see, and I don't want to have to be messing with a button before I do that. So I usually run my dot in environments like that at a lowest possible setting where I can still see it with the naked eye even with a weapon light on. So it might bloom a little bit under night vision. As far as light transfer through the window with night vision, it's fine, but there's that strange distortion I get from the lens when I'm just got a little bit of parallax introduced into the gun. I don't care for that. And obviously, I've had 2 EFLXs on 2 different guns lose 0. One lost at 0 with one-handed manipulations, SIG 320. Drop test, it lost it again. This one lost it on the first drop test, and I got some significant damage on my window. Wouldn't preclude me from using the optic. I can still use it, I can still shoot it. I would just have to re-zero it first. So, I hate to say it, but as far as this particular iteration, this model, as of right now, January 2023, the EoTech EFLX is a huge pass. Don't buy it. And there you have it. That is my review of the EoTech EFLX. If you guys are interested in staying up to date on all the current Sage Dynamics content, you can head over to patreon.com/Sage Dynamics and become a supporter, where you'll see almost all the videos that will never make it to YouTube. Until next time, everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, train accordingly.